I should add one other little to our trip. When we were, I was bringing up my little sailing boat and trailing it behind, and we got on the northeast extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and all of a sudden I heard this terrible noise, and the mast, which was strapped to the back of the boat, had come loose, and the mast was now dragging along. As I slowed down to look, the mast was on the other lane, and this mast was across there. You know, it was like a 30-foot mast or something like that, and it was all the way across the road. And fortunately, there was no car coming. So every time I tried to slow down, the mast would go forward, and I couldn't get off the side of the road to get it there. Well, I finally did. Well, of course, all the cabling inside the mast was shot by this time because it just wore right down on the road. So we get it all hooked up, get up here, and take it to the boatyard. And of course, this is in August, and I said, "How soon can you get this cable repaired and these pulleys?" And he said, "Well, probably in a week." So we're staying here a week. So at the end of the week, I pick up the boat again and strap it back on, and away we go. Never to be used.
We did have one occasion that was pretty scary coming down. My wife, Mary Ann, was driving, and we were just outside of Cleveland, and one of these overpasses. And she's just driving along normally, no problem, perfectly good day. And all of a sudden, a giant truck tire comes bounding off of the upper thing and goes, "Ba-dee-oh, jumps right over us and keeps on going. And that was, we thought, we just about bought the farm on that one. Don't know where it came from. Had no idea.
So, personally for you gentlemen, what are some of the favorite things that you like to do while you're here at Chautauqua?
You didn't decide cocktail hour? Is there something?
Before cocktail hour.
That's assumed.
Well, I was a couple of remarks I'd like to make about coming and going and why we came and went. Especially why we came and went. Gene, having grown up in Cleveland, Grandpa Lee would come to Connecticut quite frequently, and the pressure mounted for us to come to Cleveland to visit him. The highlight vacations of my life were not the weeks spent in Cleveland, Ohio. There probably is a lot to do in Cleveland, but we didn't seem to discover it. So when we first started coming to Chautauqua, making this long trek, which would have been in the early to mid 70s, it was largely, from my perspective anyway, I don't know about your mom, Jean's perspective, almost a defensive measure. I mean, one, to fend off the barrage of postcards and other things we get from Aunt Bernice, which maybe as an aside I should describe. I mean, my recollection is about October we'd be start getting these postcards, and they would start out, you know, "Dear Gene and Jerry," and you know, "I'm so hoping that you'll be at Chautauqua next year," and the first 3 or 4 lines would be nice, smooth flowing writing, and she got down the card, the writing got more and more cramped, and she got to the bottom of the card, and the writing went across and around and back around again.
Exactly what it did.
Then around again, and getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But they all you know, you get one about one a month, and they all say the same thing. And
we should actually interject there. One of the driving forces here for coming to Chautauqua, of course, was Aunt Bernice and her persistent communication. But the real thing that drove it, we found out later, was that nobody wanted to be at the end of the 9th month. The last month of the season was dead last week, not last week. So we would come in and fill that void and make her nut for the year. Us coming in would be just make her barely profitable so she could do it again the next year. And so that's what really drove it. But it was interesting, when Aunt Bernice passed away, of course, that solidifying factor went away. And it was in those years that we did some Chautauquas at sundry and other places, Brush Creek Ranch and Basco Lodge. We got together as a family unit, and many of us, different groups of us, at these different disparate places where it was, we had more room, easier, all that stuff, but geographically more dispersed, more difficult for some people to do, and so forth. But that went on for a number of years, and I think the credit goes to Jerry. I think Blair, that to bring us, Jerry said, you know, we need to go back to Chautauqua. And I said, Jerry, if you do it, I'll come, but I ain't doing it because it's too complicated, because there's no place to house 30 or 40 people conveniently in the style that we wanted to, where we could have our own dinners, and it just doesn't exist here, right? It just doesn't exist. You had to fight and figure and scrape and so forth. And we got back to the Spencer, we went to other places, but it was through Jerry's persistence that Chautauqua was re-energized. So while Mother Lyon and Bernice and Lee and all of these early settlers drove the early days, and Aunt Bernice certainly drove the middle years, it was really Jerry Chichester that brought Chautauqua reunion back to Blair and to myself.
And it should be said that it's been Karen Lyon Glover has sustained it in the last several years, and now has us in 3 side-by-side houses on the edge of the lake.
Yeah, right, right.
But one thing, we started coming in, as I said, in the early to mid-70s because of a desire to avoid Cleveland and Aunt Bernice's persistence, as you point out. But the first couple of years were pretty, I wasn't sure I'd upgraded from Cleveland because it seemed as though Jean and I and our 2 children were the only people that were, didn't meet the classic definition of Chautauqua being a place where old women took their mothers. And we felt really quite uncomfortable in many ways. One year, though, our trip coincided with Wayne and Mary Ann and family, and I mean, it was transformation. The kids loved it, we loved it, you guys must have loved it, because we made sure after that we had, you know, extended family here, and that's when it came alive for me.
Hi, I'm Karen Glover, Karen Lyon Glover. My father is Wayne Lyon, and I've been coming to Chautauqua, I think, since I was 5 years old, pretty much every summer. And I have my dad to thank for that, and my great aunt Bernice, and my grandmother Lyon. I've loved coming to Chautauqua. It's been a wonderful time to be able to spend time with family, to walk and enjoy the grounds, and most important, really, to enjoy each other's company. Memories of my dad at Chautauqua, I think I remember him most as being in the basement of Aunt Bernice's, laughing and telling stories and talking about what new appliance to buy for the inn, or joking about cocktail hour. But I think the most important thing that I remember about my dad with respect to Chautauqua was there really was no question as to whether or not we were ever going to Chautauqua. We always were going to go to Chautauqua, and it was always extremely important for us as a family to do this, to make this trek. So that consistency and that pride of the family. Also, when Paula was asking me about pictures of my dad at Chautauqua, my dad was the one that was always taking the pictures. So he was the one with the video camera when video cameras were extremely large, heavy, cameras about this big that you had to carry around on your shoulder. And he was the one who always had his camera in his pocket that was getting the family picture. So for those pictures, we're going to be forever thankful. My cousin Jerry, I've loved my cousin Jerry for a long time. My fondest memories of him are, sitting on the porch at the Chautauqua Inn, or sitting on the porch, now at the other houses and places that we've rented at Chautauqua, and hearing the stories and laughing, and his gentlemanly manner, his interesting ideas, his knowledge has always fascinated and intrigued me, and I've always loved to spend time with him. My Uncle Blair, my memories of my Uncle Blair, the thing I liked best about my Uncle Blair when he was little is that he'd bring my 4 cousins for me to play with. So that's what I remembered most when I was little. Also the tennis matches that he and my Aunt Jane and my dad and my mom would play. But as I've gotten older, I've had the pleasure of getting to know my Uncle Blair you know, in terms of all of his interests, and he's fascinating. I've had such a great time learning more about what he knows and hearing his stories, whether it be, you know, his friend who owns the house a couple doors down, or the Shakespeare, or the Italian, or going to him and being his date at the opera last night. He's a man of many parts, and you know, I look forward to learning more and more about him.
Well, Blair and I had been early adopters, and then for various reasons, again, you know, the kids grow up and interests diverge and so forth. You go get away from it, and it was, as I said, it was really Jerry that brought us all back to Chautauqua. And of course, Blair has a huge history in Chautauqua,
Right.
Much outside of our family. He's had friends and guys he went to school with, and he knows a lot of folks here. So you had a Chautauqua experience was much broader than Jerry and I.
Well, I think the fact that I went to Mercersburg in central Pennsylvania, which central Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, fed into that school, and a lot of people from, some of which I knew, but the family names from that school had been at Chautauqua, and like the next door house to these houses is owned by Jim Bram, who was one of my very good friends at Mercersburg, and we've kept up over the years. And so, yeah, unfortunately, you're not here this week, but anyhow, that sort of thing made it a little larger experience. But I think one of the great experiences that we had at Chautauqua, and all of us participated in, and you, younger generation, was the great tennis lottery.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were all playing tennis, and they had to get to the tennis lottery because there were a limited number of courts and a limited number of times, and we all had to get to the lottery just at the right time. I think it was 5 o'clock, and it kind of cut into a cocktail hour a little bit.
Yeah.
So after a while, we decided we'd plot a few children up there. We kind of drew who was going to go up there and how we'd get the best numbers. And, it was a real game.
When you have 15 people up there drawing numbers, you almost always got 5 courts. So.
Yeah. We had a wonderful time. That was kind of a game that we all enjoyed playing.
That's true.
Well, and Aunt Bernice would draw a number. Pretty soon cocktail hour was up at the tennis lottery. And
of course, we had shuffleboard tournaments and sailing events, and the kids would go to what's now boot camp, but I guess we call it Boys and Girls Clubs, and learn to do all sorts of interesting things. So it's been a great learning experience for our families and great fun for us. And
hi, I'm Brody Chichester, and my grandpa's Jerry Chichester. I really like Jerry because he's a great grandpa, and he loves to play shuffleboard. And I love to play shuffleboard with him because he's a great sport, and he's really competitive. And it's always fun to play with him because he's always fair, and he always congratulates you when you do good.